Hello, everyone. It's day 69. I have to say it slow because for whatever reason, like I can't say numbers that start with a six fast. I don't know. Anyway, I started out like working on the CS50 project a little bit. I was started to watch the CSX lectures on recursion, but like I don't know, I wanted to fiddle with the program a little bit, and like I got to a point. So backstory, for part one for the CS50 homework, we have to write a program in C, and the program's called readability. Basically, it's supposed to take a input string from the user, and it's this formula that counts the letters, words, sentences, plugs into a formula and determines the grade level, or whatever. So they gave us like test cases to use or whatever. And like, I got to a point where 2 out of the 3 numbers would be spot on. And then that last number would be like 1 off. Like one time I did it, I was way off. Like the grade level always kept saying 1 no matter what, but I realized I wasn't like counting right. And so then I got it to be 1 off. No matter what I tried, it was just 1 off in another direction or something. And like, I was trying to go about it where I was trying to think of like, all right, if it's a space, then, because they gave you like a couple like scenarios, but like, of course, they didn't give you the full thing. They want you to think about it. So like, if it was a space, you had to put it, consider a new word being a space. Then I was like, well, say a word has a comma behind it. So like, if you look for punctuation, like a semicolon and a comma, they're common things that come behind a word, but don't necessarily equate to being a new sentence yet because it's not a period. It's just comma and another space. So I'm like, if I count space, I was counting double for some stuff or whatever. Then like an hour after I was working into it, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pause. And like I wrote out some pseudocode or whatever. And then I just started watching the CSX videos for this section's on recursion or whatever. I'm like now getting to the point where, cause like yesterday wasn't that bad just because I've gone through JavaScript up until classes and ES6 modules. However, like I noticed like some stuff I just knew just because I was familiar with programming in a capacity, not necessarily JavaScript before. Like the other stuff, like I didn't spend as much time on. I didn't really take a deep dive or whatever. So like I decided to take a deep dive and go backwards or whatever. I know most people are the exact opposite. They're in a rush to be like, ooh, let me learn React. I don't care about React or whatever. So not at the moment anyway. So I'm like, let me go back. Because like the further I got into it with the Odin project, the more I just felt like there's so much stuff out there. And it's like, it's one downfall of being a self-taught developer. Like say for instance, you buy a Udemy course. Like all the Udemy courses usually do hit all the points, like higher order functions, closures, recursion, asynchronous JavaScript, promises, currying, like all that kind of stuff. It's just like when you're reading it, like they may have like a 3-minute video, at most maybe a 5-minute, 10-minute video on a topic. You just don't know how important it is at the time because for the most part, especially a Udemy course, the main focus is building a project. So like they're going to give you the information as quick as possible and as limited, most basic details as they can, because the main focus is for you to build a project because that's what gives them their money. That's what gives them their views or whatever. And so like, I think that's what downfall for a lot of self-taught developers, especially if like you're going that route, like the Udemy route or whatever. It's like, you don't really know what's important until it's almost too late in a way. Like you in an interview and they ask you, tell me what the execution call stack is. You never even heard of that. You have no idea what it is. So I'm lucky I came across the CSX curriculum most definitely, just because it's a lot of stuff that like understanding how like recursion, for example, works under the hood, like what the call stack looks like, what the global execution context looks like, what the local execution context looks like, what global memory looks like it helps you solve the problems because you know what it's doing under the hood. So it makes it easier to put the function, like put it in terms of JavaScript, the code on top of that or whatever. So, but no, I'm definitely glad that I came across that curriculum though. And I'm getting to the part where I've noticed I spent a decent amount of time on the first time I went through JavaScript. So it's like, that's probably why like I'm getting it quicker just because I'm not seeing it for the first time. I'm just kind of reinforcing the why to go with I already knew like how to write a recursive function, whatever. Like I wasn't as like familiar with this because like Free Code Camp probably had like 2 questions on recursion. I know I went through javascript.info. They had at most like 3 or 4 questions. So it's like, it's just not something that you see a lot or whatever. But anyway, I watched all the playlist videos. For this particular one, they had a playlist to go with it. And rather than being like a 2-hour lecture type workshop deal, it was like a quick like 10-minute video, 10-15-minute video. The guy like gave you a scenario. He was like, all right, like told you why, recursion is a thing, like why it's useful in some cases or whatever. And then like he used one example and just kept building on it. All right, well, here's how we can improve the program. Here's how we can use a parameter with recursion or whatever. Here's how we can refactor the code or whatever. So like it was nice that he just kept that one example and saw all the way through, opposed to like breaking up and kind of confusing you with all these different examples all over the place. So that was cool. And then like after each little segment video, you had to do like 2 or 3 problems on CSX or a web interface. And then some problems didn't have a solution, but like this section had more solutions than any of them that I've seen. I guess because recursion is usually a harder thing to grasp or whatever. So like solve it your way, then you watch the solution video or whatever just to see how they did it. And of course in JavaScript, there's more than one way to accomplish the same thing or whatever. So like usually when I did it, my solution was never identical to the way they did it, but I did it to a level that I understood. Like I know some people see like all these fancy ways of accomplishing something, like, yeah, it's cool because you wrote in 2 lines of code, but as far as the readability, it's hard for somebody to know what your code is doing or whatever. So, but anyway, so that was cool. I finished the whole section. Then I went back to my CS50 homework. I actually finished the readability, part 1, the readability program after the fact, after I'd been like trying to figure out how to like handwrite my functions. I found out there was a function called isAlpha that like checks if it's an alphanumeric character or whatever, or alphabetic character. And there's like a whole list of other functions that I found. You just have to import the library and see or whatever. So it's like thinking about it, like I knew how to do it in JavaScript like that, but it's like the C doesn't have the same equivalencies, I guess, as JavaScript does. Like automatically C doesn't even keep track of the length of an array. You have to pass that in as input. So it's like little things like that just make it challenging or whatever. It's like you know what to do, but like you just don't know how to convert that into the C language or whatever. So after I turned that in, and then part 2, we had to make a program that performs the Caesar cipher. So the user inputs a key as a command line argument, and then after at the runtime and after the program's compiled and ran, it asks him for text, like a line of a string of words or whatever, and based on the key, the computer prints out what the cipher text will be or whatever. I had to go back and watch I realized I never watched the command line arguments video to go with the lecture for CS50 because I couldn't figure out like the syntax for it. Because it was like you don't use int main, use the argc. Int argc is like basically the variable is a number telling you how many elements are in the argv string array that holds the input from the user or whatever. I think I said that right. But yeah, so I got it to read in. The next step is like checking to make sure they inputted a string and like no extra characters in there or whatever. I'll finish working on that tomorrow. I'll probably do that first to get that out the way. And then I can finish out that section. And then if I want to, normally I said on Wednesdays is when I watch the next lecture. So that'd be just in time to watch the next week's lecture if I choose to or whatever. But yeah, as far as CSX, all I have left now is the asynchronous portion, and which I've never gone through asynchronous JavaScript before, so that'll be like learning something new or whatever. Like I've seen promises just like a couple practice questions, but that's not like actually learning it or whatever. And then object-oriented programming, which I have gone over, I just didn't go over it under the hood or whatever. Like I had to use classes and I had to use factor functions and all that for Odin projects, which I'm glad that they did that, because that made me take a deep enough dive to know how to write a program with it or whatever. So, but yeah, coming to the end though, like after I get asynchronous JavaScript down and then take another recap on objects and like get familiar with working with APIs, like that's pretty much, and like little stuff like currying and that kind of stuff, like that's pretty much the end of JavaScript. And then at this point, I'm still leaning towards going with Node as to be what I'll tackle next. If I do learn React, it'll be after that. Because I mean, and at the end of the day, it's still the front end, just another way of making the front end with a framework. I'd rather learn like the back end so I can make more something like a full stack app, whether I can, before I have to worry about using a framework on top of it or whatever. But that's just me. Everybody do their own thing. It's my journey. Your journey is your journey. But yeah, so I'll be glad when I finish though, these CSX challenges, because I haven't like wrote a program. Like I wrote these little programs for the challenges, but like made anything or worked on like a project in like over a week. Like my walking time is sad. Like I wouldn't even post it. Cause like I've been coding, but it's like, it's nothing keeping a record. Like my code pen probably got like 100 code pens this past week or whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's worth it. I've learned so much in this past week, probably more than I learned this whole challenge, but you know, but yeah, good day. Looking forward to tomorrow. After tomorrow, I have 30 days left, like a month left to my 100 days. So let's see what this last month will be about. But yeah, great day.